to cannabis and all these cannabis derivatives and all these products, that it's something huge here in Mexico. So that's the main idea of this conversation, of this conference. So, well, first of all, let's talk about what are the main the main important aspects of importing cannabis into Mexico, and in doing so, we prepare this question, and it's something that you should be having in your minds. This is, how can I start importing cannabis products, and what can I import into Mexico? Well, first of all, we have to explain and we have to tell you that importing goods into Mexico, it's totally different than importing goods, for example, into the US or into Canada. This means that when importing things into the US, there's something called importation on behalf of. That means that I am not the importer of record, but I am acting as the importer of record, and I am importing things under the name of another person. This could be a third party, this could be a person that I have an agreement with, or what have you. In Mexico, there's no such thing. In Mexico, in order to import things, you have to be the importer of record, okay? So by saying this, we are just opening a big and a broad responsibilities issues, because you are as the importer of record must comply with all these import regulations. And if there is something missing, and if there is something that you didn't do, you will be the direct responsible for whatever that missing information or misunderstanding or missing documentation may be. Okay, so this is something very important to keep in mind when doing business in Mexico, in particular when importing things into Mexico. So what I put up a list of the main aspects, the general aspects of importing, or requirements of importing goods into Mexico. And first of all, you can import goods by being an individual or a corporation. Okay, so that's number one. You have to decide whether as an individual you import goods into Mexico, or as a corporation. Could you please move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Then there's something additional to this. You have to be a taxpayer in Mexico. You have to be a registered taxpayer in Mexico in order to be able to have access to this import, let's say, to the import activities. So you are now an individual, or you are a corporation. So now you have to go and get your taxpayer's ID or taxpayer registration, because you will have to pay taxes. That's for sure. Remember that there are two sure things in life. One is death, and the other is pay taxes. Okay, so this is no exception. Mexico is not exception for this. We will have to pay taxes, or in this case, let's call them duties upon importation. Okay, so after that, we need a general importer registry. What is this? This is kind of a license. It is kind of an import license. It is not a license as such, or per se, but it is something, it is a requirement that we all have to comply with in order to import things into Mexico. This is imagine that this is the gatekeeper, or the gatekeeping situation, where you are a taxpayer, you are registered, but if you don't have this registration, you will not be able to import. Okay, so this is something really, really important. And also, it is very important to mention that the Mexican Tax and Customs Authority are linking every and all customs obligation to keeping and maintaining this import registry. That means that if for any reason the company or you as an individual fail to comply with 1 or 2 or 3 or some other important requirement, tax requirements, for example, you fail to file your tax return for fiscal year 19. Then the authority is linking that failure to present that tax return as an event of cancellation of your general importer registry. And that means that if that registration or your registry as an importer is canceled or somehow suspended, you will not be able to import goods into Mexico. So this is a very important thing to keep and care, okay? Now, another difference with respect to some other countries is that in Mexico, you will have to hire the services of a customs broker, okay? In the US, I believe, I understand, and in my practice, I have assisted companies in Mexico doing business in the States, of course, with my counterparts in the US. And you have to hire a customs broker sometimes, and sometimes it's not necessary to do so. Okay, but in Mexico it's mandatory to do so, or at least it was mandatory a few years ago. There was no importation or no exportation that could be done without the assistance of a customs broker. A customs broker is a person that is authorized by the government, specifically by the customs authority, to supervise in a way your customs and trade operation. The specific import activity or the specific importation that you are planning to do, it has to be supervised by this customs broker. However, a few years ago, if I recall correct, 4 years ago, the law changed as to open the possibility of not hiring a customs broker, which is always a third party that you have to go and hire and have an agreement and pay fees and whatever. The possibility is that you have a legal representative of your company to act as the customs broker. There are pros and cons of this situation. Why? Because the customs broker itself, it is ruled by the customs law and some other regulations, but the legal representative acting on behalf of your company, it has to be granted with a power of attorney by the same company, and that person has to have a specific background and experience in customs and trade, and preferably if that person worked in the past or has worked for a customs broker. Okay, so it is possible to do it. Pros and cons. Responsibility is a big issue here, and also when dealing with sensitive goods or sensitive products as cannabis products. The other thing that is a super important requirement is the tariff classification. In Mexico, import requirements, this means non-tariff regulations and restrictions, and I will explain that a little bit further. And also duties are paid or complied with based on the tariff classification. Okay, super important. Mexico just recently adopted a 10-digit tariff classification. In the past, it was an 8-digit tariff classification. In the States, in Canada, and in some other countries, they have 10 digits for tariff classification, or they call them the use of the harmonized tariff schedule. So these 10 digits help identify at a more specific level of detail what the product that is going to be imported into Mexico is about. Now, in Mexico, as I was telling you with respect to the tariff classification, we have import requirements, and we have these import requirements are tariff or duty. These requirements are complied with once the company pays the import duty required to import the goods into Mexico. This is 5%, 10%, whatever percent, plus the VAT that in some cases certain or specific goods for specific activities must pay VAT upon importation. Okay, and then we have the non-tariff restrictions and regulations. What are those? The non-tariff restrictions and regulations are those requirements that are complied with not by paying any amount, but by securing a specific import requirements. This is import permit, input registration, sanitary registration, notice of establishment, whatever. There are certain, and there are a catalog of non-tariff regulations and restrictions that importers have to comply with. In Mexico, products that are sold regularly in the domestic market, they must comply at the same time with these import requirements. So the level is the play field, sorry, is leveled as to avoid let's say difference in application or different applicability of the law with respect to local domestic products and with respect to foreign imported products. Okay, so this is something that we have to bear in mind. We have to play at the same level of requirements, national goods and foreign goods. Okay, if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, tariff classification. Some of you, if you are familiar with importing goods into the US or into Canada or into whatever country you are visiting from, you have to use tariff classification. And this is to avoid using commercial names, and also is to let's say, to identify and facilitate trade amongst countries, to identify these goods by numbers, something that I just explained you a few minutes ago. And that means that every product has to be identified with these 8-10 digits, depending on the country the goods are entering. And as I said, this tariff classification, or this tariff item that's also identified with us, implies or determines payment of duties, determines compliance with non-tariff regulations and restrictions, and also refers to the origin of the goods. Okay, that means preferential and non-preferential duties. Okay, this is reserved sometimes when there are some countries and there are some goods that when they are imported into Mexico, they are in a way produced in a specific country with anti-dumping duties, or let's say sometimes they are avoiding the payment of duties by having these government benefits that are giving them by these countries of origin. So Mexico identifies those countries and identifies those products with the tariff item and list an import quota that has to be paid. Okay, so this is, I don't foresee this for cannabis or any of the cannabinoids or cannabis derivatives, but this is just to give you an idea of what we may face when importing things into Mexico. And remember, this is not only about importing the raw material or importing the plant or importing the seed. There are companies out there that are in the manufacturing process. That means that these companies are planning to import into Mexico, a manufacturing plant to extract the oil or to extract specific byproducts of cannabis and the plants. Okay, so this is something that we have to keep in mind when thinking about importing goods into Mexico. Not everything is related to the cannabis itself, but there are some other industries that are, of course, willing to come into Mexico for these purposes. Okay, the next, please. Now, this is the second part of the question. What goods can be imported into Mexico? It is really complicated and it's really complex to give you a list by tariff item of the goods that are or will be allowed to be imported into Mexico, because it all depends on what raw materials are used for what specific medicine or what specific experimental drug. We don't know, but probably you know more than you know what products or raw materials are required for the production of a specific product. Let's say an ointment, you are familiar with that. So it is important that before planning on importing goods into Mexico, determine along with someone that is involved in the Mexican legal market, or of course in the customs market, to understand what would be the specific tariff item or specific tariff schedule of your raw material that you're planning to import into Mexico. But the thing is that this is the list of the goods that under the current approved regulation for medical use of cannabis are allowed to be imported into Mexico. That means raw materials for the production of cannabis-derived pharmaceuticals, raw materials for the production of whatever medical drug it's planned to be manufactured in Mexico. Also, the derived pharmaceuticals themselves. Okay, so if there's a preparation already made that it's derived from cannabis, that is also subject to importation into Mexico. The cannabis medical product itself, if there is a product, if there is a specific medical drug that it's manufactured by any company in the world, that product is subject to be imported into Mexico. Okay, bound molecules also, and the next two items are probably not something that we put a lot of stress or a lot of importance into this conference, because it's for personal and medical use. That means that if I am required to use a specific drug or a specific medicine for one of the treatments that I need at this point in my life, I have to go and import this product with or under the umbrella of these regulations for the medical use of cannabis. I am not saying that this is not important. Remember that in Mexico, or if you don't know this, in Mexico, the background, the main issue that made the legalization or regularization of cannabis in Mexico was because of the personal and medical use. That means that people went to the Supreme Court of Justice and secured these rulings where the Supreme Court decided that the use of medical cannabis for their personal medical use was necessary. So this is what makes us be here at this point in time. But what I'm trying to say is that this is something from a personal point of view of the person requiring that product. And also we have these international passengers. This is very important because this happens in the States also. The regulations in the States are state bound. That means that they are state by state. And there are some states that, and there's this regulation that you cannot travel by air with your cannabis products to go from one state to the other. There's a regulation that is not allowing this. I don't know if that is changed at this point in time, but that has been around. So it is something similar in order to, if you visit Mexico from whatever country you are, and you are having with you cannabis products, you have to bear in mind that there are some specific and special requirements in order to avoid possible implications. And of course, I'm talking about negative implications about this. Okay, next, please. When we talk about raw materials, we identified the seeds, we identified the seedlings, and this plant propagation material. Specifically, this is what the regulations to medical use of cannabis allows or identifies as raw materials. Okay, so this is something that we have to keep in mind. Although let's remember something. Although these regulations, they have like a list of definitions, there are some, or there may be some other interpretations or some other products that are to be considered raw materials for a specific, or for the manufacturing of a specific product, okay? That if they are not derivatives or byproducts of cannabis, they may be imported into Mexico without complying or without the observation of the regulations set forth in this set of rules. Okay, so just keep in mind that there may be some raw materials that are no cannabis derivatives, and maybe they are used in the manufacture of maybe some other products that are now in the market, and they don't have to be necessarily derivatives or cannabis derivatives or byproducts of cannabis. Okay, so that's something that we also have to keep in mind. Next, please. Okay, this is another question that we have heard from many people that are interested in doing business in Mexico, or to understand what the cannabis and the legal cannabis world in Mexico looks like or will look like. Okay, because remember that we are in the verge of this, we are in the process. There's just one door open, and there are so many doors that need to be opened in order to have to transit through this way. That's why we call this presentation a balance, okay, between what we can do now, a balance what we are doing, and what we will be doing in the next, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so what is the importation process? How does it work? And what do I have to do or comply with to start importing? Okay, we talk about the general import requirements, that is to be a taxpayer, to have to decide whether you are importing as an individual or a corporation or what have you. We understand this, but now we have to identify what is the importation process. Okay, once that you have all those requirements, you have to go with your customs broker or your legal representative, for that matters. You have to go and prepare an import entry. This is what an import entry looks like. Can you please go to the next slide? The next, please. Okay, this is what an import entry looks like. Okay, Hopefully you can see it on your screens clear, but this is the document that we will have to produce. Okay, let's say that this is like a birth certificate for your products and when importing it into Mexico. So these are these, as you can see, there are some information that has to be complied, and that means the name of the importer, the name of the exporter. That is super important to identify the name of the exporter, because one of the reasons or one of the main suspension events for your import or your registration is that the exporter is non-existent. Okay, something huge. We have to identify, we have to disclose this information. Okay, we have to inform the authority that who is our producer, who is our supplier, who is the person who is selling the product to us. Okay, and we also have to inform of specific issues, such as if that person or company is a taxpayer of whatever country, the means of transportation. If it's in air, we have to describe the airway bill number, things like that. Okay, so formal stuff. And some other very important issue is we have to evidence that we are the legal owners of the goods. That means that we have to have a sales invoice. Okay, super important. Sales invoice where the seller specifically indicates the value of the goods and the price that we paid for those goods. Okay, super important also, because at this point in time, cannabis products, derivatives, medicines, whatever, they are treated as a regular object. They are treated as my iPhone, or they are treated as a pair of glasses. Okay, we have to comply with the same requirements that all goods must comply when importing into Mexico. Okay, if we go to the next slide, we can see the second part of this import entry. And in the middle, this says observaciones in Spanish, and that's observations or comments. In that area is where we have to identify the invoice number, as I told you, evidencing the purchase of the goods. And also we have to inform what are the requirements that we have to comply with. If we have an import permit, if we file a notice of importation, if we have a sanitary registration of the product, and this is basic for medical products. Of course, there are different stages or different levels of products, but in general, let's say that this is one of the import requirements that we will be having or something that we have to observe. Okay, and down there at the last part, you see that there's a tariff item for the product and general information about it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, once you have the import entry, we have to, in this case, the customs broker, let's say that he's at the airport, he has the box of your products, and he has the import entry. Now he has to prepare or present that import entry with the customs authority. That means that you have to pay the import duties and taxes or anti-dumping duties, if that would be the case. Go pay them and then present the goods and the import entry along with all the documents that I just told you about with the customs authority. This is something really, let's say, really funny, because there's like a traffic light where something similar, of course, not the traffic light itself, but where you have to push a button, and then this button indicates whether, if it's red, you are under customs inspection. Your product will be inspected by the customs authority. They will check all the papers, they will check your product, and they will also confirm whether you are importing what you told them that you will be importing, okay? If after pressing this button, you get the green light, you're free to go. But that this does not mean that you will be going free forever and ever, okay? This means that this, let's say, this customs clearance procedure is over, but you will be, or you may be inspected in transit to your warehouse, or while in your warehouse, you could be inspected by customs authority with respect to your recent importation, okay? So if you get this red light, you go to the customs inspection, and if they determine that there are inconsistencies, they may open an administrative procedure. If they believe that you comply with all the requirements that you must comply with, then you are free to go. Something really, really important. There are some goods which are not easily identifiable, okay? If I show you this, you know what that is, okay? And the authority understand that this is classified with a specific tariff item. But if I show you this, you don't know what this is, okay? You may think it's water, but it may be tequila. We don't know. Well, you don't know, I do know. So the thing is that the authority does not know what the liquid in that bottle is. So what they do is they take samples. And believe me, these samples are taken to one of the most specialized and laboratories in Mexico, okay? And that means that the tax authority is the owner. They own this laboratory, and they use top-notch and all the important chemical and physical techniques, or whatever they are called, to understand what that product is, okay? They may let you go. You are free to go while they inspect this. But if at the end of 2 months, they determine that you told them, or the tariff classification of that product said that it's a dietary supplement, and it does not, and it isn't a supplementary thing, a dietary supplement, sorry for that, then you will be liable for whatever duties you omitted, for whatever import requirements that you did not comply with, okay? So this is something huge. Let's keep that in mind. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. These are the specific import requirements. These specific import requirements are, as I told you about a few moments ago, are depending on what is the tariff item of your product, what is the tariff classification, or under what number the product is classified, whether it is raw material, whether it is cannabis derivative, whether it's also a cannabis drug, is experimental or already in the market. We have to identify the tariff item, because once we have the tariff item, we are able to understand all these list of items, okay? Sanitary registration, this is basically for the manufacture of pharmaceuticals or prostheses, okay? Cardiac prostheses, for example, or some other products. But this is something, again, that we have to identify. This is a very complex issue. We have to identify the goods themselves, and also we have to check the identification with the corresponding law. Now, prior sanitary import permit, this is an import permit that we have to get or secure before importing goods into Mexico. There's also a notice of importation, and that depends on the product. let's say, if it's alcohol that it can be used for medical purposes, you just file a simple notice of sanitary importation. That means that you will inform the authority where you will be importing this product and the quantity or the amount of products, and that's only the only requirement that you have to comply with. Okay. Sanitary, phytosanitary requirements. These are for specific types of goods. I'm going to jump into traceability. I will discuss it further. Specific customs house upon importation. This is something huge also, due to the nature of cannabis and due to the nature of cannabis products. They will not be imported using any and all customs house. They have to specifically determine what will be the custom houses that will be dealing with this type of products. Okay, so probably we will have a list of 5 customs houses where the importation of cannabis derivatives or cannabis products will be concentrated in. Okay, now you have to file in some other cases a research protocol, a sanitary license. This is specifically applicable to cannabis-derived pharmaceuticals and components, okay? And traceability, okay? This is something huge also. We have to inform the authority. At this point in time, it is not clear what the authority, let's say, what are going to be the mechanisms for identifying this traceability. Okay, we don't know at this point in time. It may be different methods, although the regulations for the medical use of cannabis that were just published in January, last January, they determined that the OECD or the OCDE, this is this international organism, they will be able to evidence certification of the seeds, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the OECD is one of the programs, and it is a huge organization. They have a lot of programs, but one of the programs is that they certify the seeds. At this point in time, they have registered and certified 93 varieties of cannabis seeds. Okay, so this means that the Mexican market can receive these 93 varieties of cannabis seeds with certification, and that means that they will be, that we can now comply with this traceability issue. Now, again, let's wait for the authority to confirm or to see if they have different alternatives to identify or to measure the traceability of the seed, of the plant, or any other byproduct. Okay. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, how do you expect the importation of cannabis-based products for medical purposes to operate in Mexico? Okay, let me just give you a heads up. There has been one legal importation of THC product into Mexico recently, legally, under the umbrella or under the inspection of the authority. Okay, this is the first importation that was made in Mexico, and it came from Colombia, which is one of the countries where we will be importing, that's for sure, because it's one of the countries that is open to exportation. In the States, that doesn't happen yet. Canada is working on that, and little by little they are doing this effort, but Colombia is one of the countries that they are open and they are active in exporting stuff specifically cannabis derivatives, cannabis medical products, and what have you derived from the cannabis byproducts. If we go to the next slide, I believe that we can expect a lot of regulations. Okay, as I said a few moments ago, this is only a door that it's open for cannabis products. Okay, but there are some other windows and some other doors that we have to open, that the government has to open by enacting, amending, or creating laws that are already in place, but they are somehow limiting the importation of these products. So what we expect is that this will be a highly regulated market. And this is not something new for you, but Mexico has suffered from many years the organized crime and drug dealing issues. So of course, this is something that the government, and this is something that all professionals and we as lawyers or some other people that is interested in this legal market of the cannabis, we are going to fight against. Okay, so we expect to be a highly regulated market with non-tariff regulation and restrictions specific, that in prior import permits. Surely the government will identify or will make us mark the country of origin. There may be anti-dumping duties. I don't see this as something really happening, but let's put it in there. Mexican official standards, huge issue also. This is something that we have to observe and we have to comply, because regulations will be based on this. Planting of the seeds will be based on new Mexican official standards. And these are like specific rules or specific regulations that are applicable when manufacturing, when selling these type of products into Mexico. Okay, so this is something huge, and this is something we have to keep a close eye on it. The next, please. Okay, also, sectoral imported registry. In addition to the general imported registry that we just discussed at the beginning of this conversation, there's a specific sector for that we have to, or importers have to get into, have to get authorization to get into. These are the products. As you can see, they are 16 products or chapters or sectors of products that, if they fall within the scope of the firearms or the cigarettes or the footwear, whatever, the importer of record must secure a specific import registration. We foresee that there will be a specific sector for cannabis. I'm not sure if that's sector 17 or the number. It's not relevant at this point in time, but what is relevant is that we may have a specific sector. Okay, and that would be okay. Yes, please go to next. We already discussed this question. Colombia is one of them. Canada is going there. The US, not at this point in time. The next question, please. The main risk, one of the main risks, as I told you, is failing to correctly classify or identify the tariff item of your product. We have to use that. We have to be super, we have to repeat this over and over again, because the tariff classification is the key issue in this, in importing goods into Mexico. Okay, so remember that may be issues, there may be even criminal penalties in this case. Now, also the final point to it is there's an agreement that is entered by and between Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Peru, and that's the Pacific Alliance Treaty, or the Pacific Alliance Agreement, where it is possible, or that agreement foresees the possibility of recognition, of mutual recognition of medical goods and medical products. So this is huge. We have to observe that, and if you have questions with this, you have to go with someone that really understands the trade and all trade and customs issues. I would leave this. This is something huge. The market out there is important, and I hereby end my presentation. I hope that you have a bigger idea of what we are going to be facing here in Mexico. Thanks for your attention, and I don't know if we have questions and time. Sorry for questions. Felipe and
yes, you can keep talking. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Let me go through questions, or if you have identified any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Okay. Does raw material include seeds, cannabis, or hemp? I think we already answered that one. There was a specific slide where we identify what are the raw materials. Seeds, seedlings, and plant propagation materials are basically the raw materials. Hemp is not included in this regulation. Hemp is also part of what we are expecting to happen anytime soon. I know that there's a legislation in the oven, specific local legislation here in Jalisco that it's treating that part, that hemp, but at this time they are just in the oven. Thanks for your comment, Carolina. Where will we be able to consult this soon to be released regulations? There's these regulations, once they will, in the morning I was doing this presentation in Spanish, and I was explaining that it will be like a popcorn. One something pops, the other is going to be popping, and we don't have a timing. But once let's say the main or the general law for the use of cannabis in Mexico is enacted, or at least approved and undergone through all these formal regulations, that will be the triggering issue for all other laws and regulations to be published and to be enacted in Mexico. We don't have an estimation when. Hopefully I do have that information, but no, I don't have it. Thanks, Robert. Okay, someone is asking me for the tariff or import fraction or tariff classification. As I said, there's something, this is something that it's also identified as chemical classification or engineering, tariff engineering or tariff chemical engineering. And this is something that we have to discuss. I would say that if you have someone in your industry or in your company that knows about chemistry and that knows about, or you have a medical doctor there that understands what are all the components of your product or the product that you are willing to be selling into Mexico, this is a huge step. You have to contact that person, and then you have to contact someone that is involved into the legal Mexican market that understands trade issues and customs, so they can work together to identify the specific tariff item of your product. Let's not talk about the product that the neighbor imported, the product that the other company is planning to import. Let's focus on what you are planning to import and then determine the classification of that product, along with, this is like something that you have to do with 2 or 3 parties at the time. Okay. Please tell me if I am running out of time.
No, you can stay here. It doesn't matter. If you want, we can close the session.
Okay, I think I will be, whenever the participants don't have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So, okay. Do you anticipate the requirement of controlled substance license also? At this point in time, in order to import some products, you have to have this controlled substance license. Yes. I am not sure whether they will include cannabis or cannabis derivatives into that license of controlled substances. Maybe they will do it. I am not sure. Although I would say that this is something reserved for more complicated substances, that I would call them that way. No, so research or manufacture or cultivate. At this point, what we have is, for this, the regulation that we have are for production or manufacture, are for research, are for medical issues at this point in time. Okay, unless the main regulation or the main law, the main federal law is enacted or is approved, because it has undergone through this legislative procedure. It's in the last stages of this, but at this point, it's only reserved, or these regulations are reserved for the topics that I just mentioned: production, investigation, manufacturing, and medical devices. Well, not medical devices, so medicine drugs or medical drugs. Okay. Thank you, Fernando, for your comment. Okay, Pascal, that's French. I don't speak French, but thank you. Okay, where can we see a list of Colombian CBD producers so we can import to Mexico? There's a Colombian organization. I am not sure if there's a Colombian friend in the presentation or as a participant that can help us with, but there's, if you check online, there's a Colombian cannabis organization that probably can help you with identifying who the producers, authorized producers of CBD are for Colombia. What else? Something really important, because the market is new, there will be a lot of people trying to sell you magical results, or they will be trying to sell you even authorizations. I've heard of people selling authorizations for importing, and pretty much they are fake. So I would recommend you, whatever it takes more time or it takes more money to do it yourself, and always ask someone that you trust. If you don't have someone in the country, you can look for people you have certain degree of trust, and they can probably tell you, or to get a specific legal advice on who to call or what to do, because there will be people trying to sell many things at this point in time: certifications, authorizations, licenses for planting, I've seen in the market. So unfortunately, this is happening, but just keep in mind that, and try to use common sense also. I'm a licensed Colombian producer, Greenleaf Colombia, perfect. Okay, so there you have that licensed Colombian producer. Okay, I believe that if there are no more questions, we can end this presentation. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your the effort of understanding what I said. And if you have additional comments or questions, I believe that there's you can see my contact information there. I'm on LinkedIn or on the website of my law firm, legaltct.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn with my name, Alejandro Martínez Galindo. That is my complete name. And hopefully the information that I presented you is of assistance, and I'll be happy to answer some other questions. Thanks again for your time, and hope to see you soon. Bye for now.